7:23 a.m. Tuesday, November 11th. Whoa. It's time for the Podling Weekly. Oh my God. It was Points Palooza this past week. That was an impressive outing for Dill, an impressive outing for Peyton. I kind of laugh a little bit when this happens, when we have our inevitable Sacco winner, or past Sacco winner, and they are struggling to get, to name themselves. And it felt like all the stars kind of aligned for Pate, where he's like, oh my God, 137 points. Let's go. It looked like he was definitely on task. And if this is a normal week, he definitely would have named himself. But it wasn't a normal week. It was the highest scoring week we've had since week 4. The average score was 97 points, which is pretty impressive. But Dill shows up with 161 points. And it's not really just Dill that shows up. Jonathan Taylor shows up. And Drake London shows up. Nothing like playing the number one running back on the week. Nothing like playing the number one wide receiver on the week. And then everything else after that can all hopefully go to shit. But then, nope, Jameson Williams wakes up. It's a fun experience to be on the reverse end of some of those just blow up games. And it wasn't for any loss of me not having a blow up game. And Jahmyr Gibbs was the second highest running back score on the week. So it was fun to have kind of like a big duel, except the duel didn't really feel like it was ever close. I think that at one point I was looking at the end of, the beginning of Sunday's games. Genty had already done his thing on Thursday. I think Dill was already near 100 before really the games began on Sunday. Not much you're going to do there. So if anything I can tell myself is I slowed Dill down. He only scored 70 points between his final 6 players. Not including Genty, London, and fucking Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is a machine, and every year there's always kind of like an out of nowhere MVP sort of thing. In those past years, it's always been like a wide receiver sort of thing. Thinking back to my Cooper Kupp experience, but Jonathan Taylor definitely is that. Where I actively didn't think about him at all during the draft, and in fact, I think all the bad news going into the draft about the Colts, how the fact that Daniel Jones was struggling and Anthony Richardson might as well be the starter. That just all bad vibes. Then suddenly, boom, they're like this high scoring offense that's very efficient. You can't really blame yourself on saying how did I miss this? Nor can you take credit for doubling down on this unless you truly believed in you're like a Shane Steichen brother or distant family member, because there's no fucking way anyone could see this Colts thing coming. And that's the beauty of fantasy football. You can never really tell what is going to happen next. And these drafts, I think, have really revealed to me 10 weeks later, that I think going into the draft, especially now, and I talked about this a little bit at the very beginning of the year where we were kind of getting out of that little draft chaos that takes place, kind of realizing that players, these fantasy football experts, they obviously, if you were given the time, if you're given the summer, essentially 5 full months to basically overanalyze the shit out of fantasy football, you'd come to some pretty crazy conclusions, especially with the need for there to be value added. There are all these subscription services that are paywalling everything. These experts feel like they have to put something behind those walls, otherwise why the fuck are we paying for this? And I think what that's done is it's created a world the last couple of years, but this year in particular, it really feels like it's come to life, where we've overanalyzed everything to the point where we don't know anything anymore. It's like a Chinese finger trap where the more you try, the harder it is to get out. And I think it's more just kind of, what do you believe sort of things, or just logically, does that make sense? And instead, I think we rely on these fantasy football experts to be because of X, Y, and Z number, and because of X, Y, and Z thing on another team, this team is going to suck. And they're completely wrong. And then they don't really, I think I've definitely mentioned this earlier in the year, but they don't own their L's. They just move on to the next thing. Okay, Rashee Rice is so good. And I told you guys that. And it's yeah, you told us that in week 4. But I digress. I think Jonathan Taylor is very much the poster child for this year of kind of questioning these experts, and I put that in air quotes because no one in their right mind was like, oh, and go get Jonathan Taylor. Meanwhile, he has 17 touchdowns on the year. It's only been 10 weeks, and he's got 5 games of 3 touchdowns. And you're gonna have some expert that's gonna probably run themselves up on this in the next year. Jonathan Taylor will be a highly drafted, $60 to $70 running back in our league, and he'll be useless as per the tradition for these kind of things to go. But that was like a mini rant before we even get into it. We have a very exciting week. We had a very exciting week. We had some shakeups. We have another team joining the playoff guarantee. That's Christian. He locked in his playoff spot at 7-3 record. But no team so far has been eliminated, which is great. We also have 6 teams that are 4-6, 3 teams that are 5-5. Nothing has changed since we started talking about this being a very close race, and here we are in this very close race. It seems like there's just a lot of jockeying, and I think it's going to happen for the rest of the year. But Christian said this in GroupMe. This is truly the most fun 3 weeks left, regardless of wherever you stand in this. There's so much to play for right now, and I think that has a lot to do with our trade deadline, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But there's so much to play for, which is absolutely exciting to see all these teams kind of still having a chance, still playing it out. It's going to come down to points and tiebreakers. It's going to come down to a lot of different things. So with that said, let's dive into the actual Nut Report itself. So Nut Report Week 11, Tier 1. No real surprises up here. We do have 2 new names, but the first 3 names are no surprise. We have Dylan, myself, Christian, Alec, and Cal. So we actually have, if you can believe it, in Tier 1, we have 4 different records represented here. Dylan is sitting at 8-2 after that Jonathan Taylor explosion. I'm sitting at 7-3. Christian's at 7-3. Alex at 6-4, and Cal is at 5-5. In this group, generally speaking, for the majority of the year, this has been a group represented by the top 5 points scored. And Alec right now is the odd duck out. He is only averaging the 6th most amount of points. He's the only one in this group that's not averaging over 100 points. So you can start to immediately start drawing some conclusions of Alec's team is obviously lucky, or is whatever you want to do it. But I think Alec is racking up some wins. He's on a 3-game winning streak. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about Dill first. So Dill, 8-2, 5-game winning streak, looking pretty spry, looking pretty good. Got his first win against a top 5 team, which was his biggest boo-boo of the year so far. He'd been basically beating up on the bottom feeders, but hadn't won against a top 5 team. He's won. You can see I've added a couple of things to this year, or this. I've added a couple of things this week. Obviously, tiebreaker for Dill doesn't make a difference. He's a game up on myself and Christian, so he has nothing there. You'll kind of follow yourself down the last 4, a lot of W's there, 4 of them, in fact, all in a row. But then you'll see something that says the next 4. So the next 4 is taking into account for the next 4 games, which is basically until the playoffs that every team has. So here, Dill is 19-21. That's the cumulative record of the guys he's about to play. You'll see this in different shadings of green, which is obviously very good. You want to be as dark green as possible. Red, which is really bad. You want to be, you don't want to be red, but if you are very red, the darker the red is, the worse that record that you're going to play against. So as you navigate this kind of gives you an indication of what the next 4 games are going to look like. Some teams, this is how you can kind of chalk up of a quote-unquote lucky schedule. Others, they have a very challenging, make it out. This is going to be very interesting as we get into Tier 2, but I need to use Dill as an example. Again, his next 4 games, his collective record is 19-21, so just under 500. So I'm playing kind of a cumulative under 500 squad. And then Dill is leading the league right now in touchdowns with 64. What a surprise. He is Jonathan fucking Taylor. Myself, sitting at 7-3. I'm still leading the league in scoring. Got another 100-point game. Highest loss so far this year, 125.56 points. Bummer. But at least we're back on the 100 points. And doing this without Patrick Mahomes and my MVP, Brandon Aubrey. As you all witnessed, when I don't have... I really rely on having Brandon Aubrey making my kicking decisions. Otherwise, I'm spending the whole goddamn week thinking about what kicker. And for the record, I got it right. It just took 7 different add and drops to get there. I just could not get out of my own goddamn head about kickers. I don't love that experience. So props to you boys that are out there just streaming kickers or just kind of riding around, because I get it. Like, if you hit on something, it's great, and Cam Little did what he was supposed to do. But the stress of all that, I would rather just never think about it again. So we'll do that. But on a 2-game losing streak, kind of a bummer. Also, what's kind of a bummer is I'm 1-2 against the top 5. I have just not done well with these big boys the way that I'd want to. So gotta adjust that. You can see my tiebreaker there is set. So Christian, he's 120 points behind me. So that's kind of the major difference between us. So it kind of feels like a whole game at that point when you're a 100-point game between each other. And then my next 4 is 18 and 24. So I actually have a pretty even better schedule than Dill, which is great. And then Christian, same record, same next 4 as well. He's also 18 and 22 for his next 4 games. Christian is kind of back on it after his 80-point temper tantrum that he had a week ago. Back to 100 points and just chunking along. Really not much to say. He got his secured playoff spot. Christian's team's just doing the same thing that he's been doing kind of all year, which is just there. He's just there, averaging 103 points a game. Alex's team, on the other hand, is finally made out of the big pack. He's made some trades, of course, so he's really this is like Alex really making a push right now. And as a reminder, like Alex's big trades have left him in a pretty good spot. He's 221 on the year. So Alec is doing the thing that we're all always very envious of having a competitive team while also not like losing that much money. So yeah, 221 on the year, even making some big splashy trades for even like Sun God, that sort of thing. So good on Alec for being there. And if he can kind of make this work, have a bunch of money, which is like I think the first time Alex really had a lot of money going into the year. This could be nice. But what he doesn't have that's not nice is he's got one of the harder records going into the next 4. His next 4 games have a collective record of 23 and 17. Not the worst, but definitely way up there. I think it's like the second worst record going forward. So Alex not out of the woods yet. He is also, I think, 1 win away. I think if you go 7 and 4, you make the playoffs. Yes. So if Alec wins this week, he's guaranteed a playoff spot. If he loses, though, his odds go from 91% to 76%. So pretty significant week for Alec. Really needs this to work out. And as a reminder, Alec is playing, drum roll, please, Nick. So he'll probably make the playoffs. The next team on this list is Cal. Cal is 5-5, averaging the second most points a game, 111 points per game. Back on the old 100-point run. He's still going there. Just a low 100-point win, which I think for Cal feels like kind of a low end. And I do want to talk kind of briefly, and Cal's team is a good example of this, is like we have gotten to the point where the scoring is so ridiculously high this year. Like we usually always have a couple of 100-point game guys that are averaging 100 points a game, but we're not. But where we're at right now is we have 4 teams averaging over 100 points a game. We've never really had 2 teams averaging 110 points at this point. The last time we were close to this is that Gare season in 2018. We had 114 points. And then myself and Brian were right behind him with 107 points, but still a 7-point difference. What we have right now is 115 points and 111 points and 108 points. So I'm hanging on, keeping up with that pace, but we've just never had this many points. And because of that, because the averages for Cal are 111, for me 115, like for like 102 points, technically by definition, that Cal did is actually below average for Cal, which is funny because we talk about 100-point games are what we're all aiming for, and but to get to the nuance of this of like, yeah, Cal got 102 points. It's a kind of a down week for him. For other teams, that's masterful weeks. But, I think that's sometimes like a helpful phrasing. Like Christian scored 103.24 points. Christian averages 103.26 points. So pretty much an average week. Why I have no reaction to it? Because it was just like, ho hum. That's what happens. For me, I was 10 points above average. I got 125 points. I averaged 115. And then for Dill, of course, it's just astronomically, obviously, an outlier. So you can kind of like start to look at some of these games a little bit differently. And I'm not going to like, I mean, for Dill, it's easy to walk away from that and go like, well, yeah, that's a historically good game. But we're not going to like change how we think of it. Sometimes all those buttons get pressed at the same time. But for like myself and for Cal, you start putting those numbers together and you're like 125 points for me is just kind of like, that's a 10 point over, which is pretty nice. But you go down to like the lower end guys over here and, in tier 1 or tier 2 and tier 3, getting 10 points over their average. Or like for Mitch jumping ahead, he averages 82 points a game. He got 104 points this week. That's 20 points over his average essentially. That's an above average game. That's something that maybe we can look at this and say, I don't think Mitch is going to do that all the time. But 104 points for Cal is below average, or for me, below average, or for Christian, on average. That's just the disparity right now, I think, between the scoring of tier 1s and tier 2s and tier 3s. Speaking of which, let's go into tier 2. We have Jesse, Peyton, Tanner, Brandon, Mike. We have Jesse and Peyton are 5-5. Tanner, Brandon, and Mike are 4-6. Now, as a reminder, Cal is setting the record here for the 5-5 team. So he's 1,114 points, meaning that Jesse is 134 points behind that, and Peyton is 167 points behind that. So pretty much Cal's got a whole game up on Jesse and Peyton. Very helpful. But for Jesse and Peyton right now, Jesse's been really hot and cooled way off. Another one of those just kind of like disappointing 60-point outings. That's the thing with Jesse's team is like he kind of fits the mold of a couple other teams that are like, wow, you're killing it. And then just when we were just about to trust you, suddenly the bottom falls out again. And Peyton's team is exactly the same thing too, of like, it looks good. And then there'll be like a 45-point game out of nowhere that this team can pull off. And it just doesn't, there's no reason for that, but here it is. So Jesse's at 60 points. He has a 19-21 record over the next 4, so not bad, a little under 500. Peyton, on the other hand, has a 22-18 record over the next 4, so a bit more of a challenge. Though we just saw Peyton's best outing of the week and of the year for him, 137 points, pretty decent right there. He also, oh man, I had something to say about Peyton's team and I can't remember what it was. Shit. He's also like 33 points behind Jesse, so that's a pretty tight race right there. Not the tightest that we're going to have in this group, but Jesse and Peyton are just needing a couple more wins to kind of get themselves out of this like 4-6 bubble. But obviously, any loss here pulls them right back into the cycle, and it just seems like inevitable that we're going to really go down to it, and these tiebreakers are going to matter. So focus up here because we have Tanner at the 8 seed. He is 4-6, the leader of the 4-6 teams. Like I said, there are 6 of them. He has 918 points. So this is where tiebreakers matter the most. His next 4, he's 19-21. So again, a below average 500 thing, not too bad. Brandon is right behind him, and truly the difference in their scoring is 5 points. So Brandon and Tanner are effectively almost tied. Funny that Brandon would almost be tied with someone. But this is the battle for the 8 seed. So this is a battle that if everything were to lock up right now and we had all the other 7 seeds locked up, this is something to really focus on. So Brandon's 5 points behind Tanner. He's got a slightly easier schedule. He's 18-22 over the next 4. So that's going to be something we got to watch. But Brandon's he's got 3 losses in the last 4 games and only 1 game over 100. Tanner, similar to Peyton, he's got 1 big explosion game of exactly 137.84 points. Peyton just did 137.8 points. Funny. But we haven't really seen much since then. And then we have Mike, who's the 10 seed, kind of lingering, kind of a forgotten man in a lot of ways. He's not averaging a shit ton of points, 86 points a game. That's 10th in the league, which is kind of low. Historically speaking, that's generally where our 12th and 13th teams would be, at least from last year. We're not seeing that this year. But Mike is 48 points behind Tanner. So he's also actively very much in this. He has a record of 19-21 over the next 4. So again, slightly below 500. So fate is still in his hands here for him to kind of do what he needs to do. But the roll continues. Tier 3. Kind of a sad group here, starting off with the saddest of stories. Jaden is at 4-6 as well, on a 4-game losing streak. His last 4, 80 points, 35 points, 59 points, and 49 points. And Jaden was active in the trade deadline. At least Jaden was able to get to above 200. He's at 206 for his price, for his money. But this is going horribly wrong here for Jaden. And the scoring, he went from like a top 3 scorer, averaging over 100 points a lot, to he can't get 100 points. The last time he did it was in week 6, which feels like a lifetime ago. And that was like his 5th 100-point game of the year, and then suddenly just it all fell apart. Now for Jaden, and I'm not intimately aware of what's going on with the team, but like Nick, we know is afflicted by the injuries of Nick of Benson. And Benson and Bowers really kind of torpedoed Nick, and he's kind of dead cat bounced back up. But for Jaden, it's Jaden Daniels in and out, I think is it. But like the either Jaden Daniels has that much of an effect on Jaden's team, which just shows that the team isn't very good, or quarterbacks are more valuable than they ever have been if a quarterback is going in and out like this. But even Jaden Daniels is still finishing these games like 17, 18 points and then going out. But I don't know what to explain. I don't know how to explain Jaden's team right now. It's just bad. I mean, he's averaging over these last 4 games, which is pretty sad, 56 points per game over the last 4. And that's with an 80-point outing. That's pathetically low. That's so bad. And then we have nonetheless, he's only 59 points behind Tanner in terms of the tiebreaker. So very much a very viable thing for him to make up if he wanted to. He's only about 11 points back from Mike as well. So still very much involved. Mitch, on the other hand, if you had to tell me, if you had to guess right now what Mitch's record was, I bet you wouldn't guess 4-6. The dude is actively in the race. He's 3 wins over the last 4 games. He's got 200-point games in that span. He's averaging 82 points a game, which is still pretty pathetic, but he's there. He's got a hard next 4, 21-19 over the next 4, so slightly above 500. But Mitch is frisky. He's only 94 points behind Tanner. For a guy that had started the year just in the doldrums, essentially. I mean, guaranteed 14 seed. He's really risen up. He's now the 12 seed, and with a win and some things breaking the other way, Mitch might weirdly find himself in the mix. I mean, he's at 245, so he's got the most money out of the group, and he's still got hope going on, which is a lovely thing to have at this time of year. Then we have Nick, 13 seed, averaging 82 points a game, just 3 points under Mitch. He's also 97 points behind Tanner, so not dead completely, but almost getting to the point where it's like a full game. Same thing with Mitch, a full game on them. Nick has got a 19-21 record over the next 4, but Nick's biggest problem, he doesn't score touchdowns. He's got 34 touchdowns on the year, which is the league low. So maybe with Bowers coming back and Benson maybe back this week, I don't know. Maybe that kind of adjusts it. And then finally we have Cody. Cody's on a 4-game losing streak, which again, he's 3-7. Again, if I had to guess what Cody's record was, I would have assumed it was 4-6, and he was kind of in the mix, but he's not. He's also averaging the least amount of points right now, 79 points, which is not good. And it's kind of surprising because he wasn't doing horrible, but it's bad now. But what's really bad about Cody's team, outside of the 4-game losing streak, is that his next 4 games are by far the hardest by a large margin. His next 4 is 25-15. 25-15. That's a whole 10 games above 500 right there. Cody's schedule, I'm just going to pull it up just for all of us to know, because it's a murderer's row of like just the last thing you'd want to have as a team that's kind of struggling not to get eliminated. His next 4, he plays myself this week. He plays Dill, he plays Cal, and he plays Peyton. It doesn't get harder than that. He's playing like 2 of the top 3 point scorers. He's got huge records against them. So Cody, you're still alive. You have a 4% chance. With a loss going to 3-8, it's over. But Cody's still in it. Weekly points, yep, and position leaders. You love it, you see it, you do it. Nothing really to note. Post trade deadline, I hope you guys use this as your guide, because it's now just going to be a record of what you're all capable of. Some teams that I was hoping to see some movement didn't do shit. Cody's got Dak He's still averaging the least amount of points per game from a quarterback by a pretty large margin, only 13 points a game. So you get for starting Bryce Young and getting a point. Nick, also bottom of a running back leader with James Cook. I guess he's just going to hold completely on for Benson, but he's only getting 20 points per game. That's essentially what Jonathan Taylor's averaging by himself. So that's not great. Alec did address his wide receiver position. He's also averaging the least amount of points at 17 points per game. But Sun God and CeeDee Lamb, let's see what that looks like going forward. And then Jaden did what he had to do. He also adjusted for his tight end. He traded for Goddard, which I think was a good move. He's averaging only 4.6 points per game from his tight end position, which is bad. Defense doesn't really matter. No one's going to trade for it, but Cody's averaging 7.5 from his defense. I'm averaging 15.4, so massive difference between those two. And then kicking, no one's going to trade for a kicker. So, Jesse and Peyton are down there with 68 points. Just, I guess, find a better one. It's the only option on the wire. So that's the nut report there. Historical stats-wise, the only thing that is sort of significant in that sense is nothing. This is kind of another week. Cal's getting close to 110 wins. Peyton's 3 wins away from 100 wins. He just got to 100 losses this year as well, so he'd be our first 100 team. Brandon's 1 loss away from 110 losses, which would be, he's still right behind Cody there with 118 losses. I don't know. Nothing really super significant, which is always good. We don't want to have it to be wacky and crazy all the time. But yeah, let's move into the segment. I'm very excited for this segment because it's kind of like the last time I could talk about trades for the year. But yeah, the trade deadline, it passed. We survived. I'm very pleased that we did what we did. There were 31 trades on the year. 31. This is the lowest amount of trades we've had since 2021. So after the last 2 years, 2024 and 2023, we had 50 plus trades. I think this is a very explainable 31 trade outing, and I think that means 2 things. One, I think this is indicative of how close the playoffs are going to be. This is the tightest race we've ever had, and I mean that. That's not just me being hyperbolic. This is the tightest race we've ever had. By this time in 2018. Essentially, since I've been tracking it on the Nut Report, we've had 1 to 3 teams eliminated by the playoffs at this point in this season. We have 0 eliminated at this point. Cody is still alive at 3-7. He's technically not eliminated, but guaranteed we've had teams eliminated by now. At least 1 to 3 teams eliminated by now, and none of them are. So definitely the tightest race we've ever had, and that kind of explains why people are a little tighter on the purse strings, not really willing to throw out a bunch of money or a bunch of players. Secondly, we've reached kind of a bit of a cruising altitude on trade numbers. I think that managers are realizing that the selling off pieces, players for pieces, or players for cash, is only a viable strategy if people are buying. And this year, I heard overwhelmingly from just poking around the market, especially on the last week, not a lot of guys that are really willing to buy. I think a lot of the buyers have kind of bought themselves out a little bit, or the deals that people are kind of willing to peddle were just not worth their time. There was a handful of those kind of deals, but I just feel like for some reason, and I'll talk about this at the very end, about I just feel like the market itself, we've kind of adjusted ourselves quite a bit. We're really focusing on what we really want and not really reliant on buying just for the sake of buying. I feel like the novelty of draft cash is sort of past in a good way. I mean this in a good way. I feel like we've all kind of done our time of I'll spend a bunch of money and get a player. I'll spend $4 and get a player. I'll do all different combinations of it. And I think we've all kind of got that scritch. It's like when you get a new game or whatever, you got to play the shit out of it for the first week. And then afterwards, you kind of get to whatever that cruising altitude is going to be for that game. It's going to be a game I play every other night. That's great. Or it's going to be a game that I touch once a month because when I'm in the mood. That's kind of where we're at with trades and how people feel with the draft trading in my mind. And because of that, I think point one of it being a tight race had more to do with it than anything else. But it's hard in point one. If everyone's in the same tight race, you're not going to be finding a suitable trade partner when more than half the league is in the same race with you. They're going to look at you and be like, no, I'm not going to fucking help you. It's like having a division rival. I'm not going to give you my best player unless you're the Browns. You give the Bengals a quarterback, but no one was really willing to do that. So you eliminated yourself up to the top dogs. Top dogs made some moves to get some guys, and that's pretty much it. They just picked off what they needed, and then that was it. So kind of a weird year for that. 31 trades on the year, but I think it's all explainable. And I do think that this is actually growth for the league. I don't think this is like a backslide. I don't think this is something that we should be like, oh my God, what's going on? I think the fact that we are all getting to a nuanced position with draft trading. I mean, we're still, out of all the leagues that you're participating in, all the leagues that you've ever heard of, 31 trades, me complaining that we, 50 trades the past year. 50 trades. 50 trades. That's a ton of trades. Like, the whole misnomer, the whole thing that everyone bitches about in their fantasy football league is that no one trades. I'm talking about the nuance between 31 trades and 53 trades over the last 2 years. And collectively, we're talking about 80 trades since last season. I mean, that's insane. 80 trades. So I think this is growth. I think this is just showing the teams are knowing what they want. It's not like the trade market itself is drying up. Not like we don't want to trade anymore. We just have reasons not to. So for this year, I did this last year, but I'm not going to do it the same way. I want to do a couple of superlatives, some kind of awards that I've made up for teams that have done something related to trades. It's not going to be just solely focused on the trades that just happened this week or this past week. It's going to be kind of a look back on all the trades. So, handful of teams are going to get some awards. Again, not everyone's going to get an award, and I'll be sure to get back on my grind of segments that involve all 14 teams. But as you can imagine, me finding a trade for all 14 teams, which I've done twice this year, is one thing. But me to give an award for all 14 teams is too much. So these are just the top dogs. These are the top dogs that deserve these awards, and I think you'll enjoy the awards that I've given. So the first award, kind of like early in the, it's like the Grammys, it's the Oscars. The sun's still out outside. Celebrities are still showing up. We got the big awards later, but we're gonna get one of these smaller awards out of the way. The first one that gets televised. The most podly trade of the year goes to Jaden. Jaden famously last week traded Sun God to Alec for Dobbins, Goddard, and Johnston. This award was close to being also awarded to Jaden for doing the Darnold and Kamara one, which is the one that I also proposed that he actually did almost to a T. More cash involved, little swip swaps, but that was pretty close. And even the Mason and Dunze for Genty one, the pieces were right. But I'm going to give Jaden this one. And this is mostly due to the fact that we have matching layers here. And I got to give Jaden some credit. I gave him the blueprint, and he built something that was prettier than the blueprint that I gave him. Because the blueprint that I gave him is that he needed a tight end, he needed a running back, and he needed a wide receiver. And he can get those upgrades if he just sells Sun God. That's really the heart of what my trade initially was with this. And the original proposal that I had, for anyone who was not listening to the Podly but supposedly followed along anyway, was that I had proposed that he trades with Christian, Sun God, he gets Njoku as a tight end, Waddle's wide receiver, and Pollard as running back. It's kind of like upgrades across the board, but it's not, it's something that that Jaden can use as the blueprint, and he did. And I thought he was going to make the trade with Christian because I think that one makes sense. You can put cash and make it all work, but instead he used the same framework and he goes to Alec and he goes for Goddard, who is better than Njoku. Got to give Jaden credits there. Dobbins, who is better than Pollard. And then he gets Johnston instead of Waddle, and Waddle's better than Johnston. But I think this is a real mimic, so to speak, of a Podly trade construction. And I got to give this the most Podly trade of the year because it's essentially not doing exactly what I said, but doing it slightly better and getting a better return. Got some cash out of it as well. So props to you, Jaden. And because of this, you and Alec have really, really followed the order numbers that I've been passing out in those trade episodes. So welcome to my Dark Council. Alec has been a part of my Dark Council for years now since he's joined. But now you can join the benefits. The perks of being in the Dark Council is that the trades that I'm suggesting, I'll have a keen eye for you and Alec. You're my future Darth Lords. I want to make sure that Darth Cleaner and Darth Jaden. I don't know why. I kept thinking all Jaden's names are Jaden, Darth Jaden. All of those names. But all my Darth Lords can get the good trades. So welcome to my Dark Council. But I will say this, Jaden, to be a part of my Dark Council. I was really hoping that we would get a better outcome, and only 49 points on the week is really bad, and I don't know if that's a good look for us. So let's try to get the points up so you can continue to be a part of our devious and evil group that Alec has been a part of. So that's kind of like the only thing is like you gotta get the points up, because I don't want to give you the Podly trade of the year, that being the trade that costs you the year, because that would be a bad look for the Podly. All right, next trade. Brandon gets the most useless trade of the week trade, which was Alec trading Godwin for $4 to Brandon. On the Godwin thing, every news report on Godwin is bad. In fact, there was one from last week saying that he's not going to be playing until like late November, early December. Super. That's super great. Yet Brandon persists on trading $4 draft dollars for him. I know it's not a ton. It's not going to break the bank. But for some managers and some negotiations out there, and you know who you are out there, and everyone has kind of been here before, there are some managers that will nickel and dime every fucking dollar into an argument. And we're talking about like $3, no, make it $2. $2, make it $1. So like just giving up $4 essentially for free, which is what Brandon has done, is kind of remarkable. Giving up $4 for a guy who's currently hurt and going to stay hurt is also remarkable. And giving up $4 for a guy who last time we saw him play put 5.1 points total over 2 games, so essentially 2.6 points per game, literally 2.6 points per game, is also just remarkable. Four draft dollars for 2.6 points per game. Now Godwin, I guess, has this thing where you could keep him for $16, I think, or $8, I guess, is his whole thing. I don't know. I don't know what the angle is here for Brandon, to be honest. I think the only thing I can really point to is that Brandon's kind of a little late on these like star-powered wide receivers. Just from memory, he was the guy who drafted Kupp after his Triple Crown year, and Kupp played 9 games that year. He currently has Brandon Ayuk, who's 2 years removed from actually being really, really good, also injured, and for some reason still on Brandon's team. And now he's got Godwin, who's also hurt. He's also 2 years removed from his 1,000-yard season. The Godwin season that we're all thinking of was like over 5 years ago at this point. And Godwin hasn't finished better than wide receiver 56 since 2023. So $4 for this man. Call me stupid. I might be wrong, but that just seems like a really useless trade. Good on you, Alec, Dark Council, for getting $4 off of just someone that you should have dropped probably weeks ago. But yeah, I'm glad this is Brandon's headache that he spent money on. Now that I've called it out, there's really nothing that Brandon can do. If you thought about dropping him in the next 2 weeks and having us all forget that this even happened, no. I've made it a point. Now, if you drop him, someone's going to say something in Sleeper, and that's kind of embarrassing. No one wants to be called out on that kind of stuff. But, I've given Alec a lot of run here. He's been involved in the last 2 trades. He's not going to get spared from this one, though. Alec gets the what are we doing not trading trade of the year. And this is the low point. This is why in the Dark Council you're not yet a Sith, you're not an Emperor yet, Alec. You're still on your way. You're still learning. But what are we not doing? Why are we not trading for a quarterback? Like, specifically Stafford. I invented a trade market for Diz around Stafford, talking about how good he was and how he's been outscoring Jalen Hurts and how he's an asset that people should be looking into. And since week 3, he's number 1 in QB in fantasy scoring. He's the number 1 QB in fantasy. And he's available for anything. And he's been doing this, for 7 weeks. Number 1 QB over 7 weeks is more than the entire season. It's more than half the season. He's available. And now he's creating a headache in my mind for Diz because he didn't do anything with him, because now he's doing better than Jalen Hurts. Now, I don't want to imagine that Alec, a follower of my Dark Council and someone who is obedient to the Podly, didn't at least ask for his asking price. I know that Darth Cleaner would do that. I would only have to assume that Diz, who's a part of the rebellion, set the price way too high for Stafford for any Dark Lord to really follow through with it. But if this wasn't the case, and Alec didn't ask Diz about Stafford's availability, what are we doing? Because Indiana Jones, the time is up, man. He's not escaping this mountain. He's not escaping through that stone door. I think Indiana Jones has been trapped inside, and he's not making it out alive. Over the last 2 weeks, we've seen the exact thing that I talked about last week, I feel like, about the fact that, like, as soon as you start to see these turnover numbers start to happen, how can you trust this man to go all the way? And Alec has invested in these peripheral positions, wide receiver. He's put some investments here and there. He's consolidated, and yet didn't make any improvement to his quarterback position, which I think ultimately is going to be his death nail for the season. The turnover cracks have shown, and now they're only getting bigger. I warned of this, and this past game, this past Germany experience, he had an interception, 3 fumbles, and one of those fumbles being lost. That's essentially 4 turnover-worthy plays. Honestly, only got 2 of them out of that. But this is coming off of his 3-pick bonanza that he was doing the week before. I think, and this is against the Steelers and the Falcons. Both of those defenses are above-average defenses. They have some surprising elements to them, but they're not the killers. So when you look ahead towards the most important weeks that we have, these first 5 weeks, or these next 5 weeks, what Alex is about to experience is that Daniel Jones is on bye this week, so he gets you nothing, so useless there. I would have at least tried to trade for a quarterback and try to cover for this. You're still in a very tight race. You're only 6-4. You could lose easily and still miss the playoffs. It's not a guarantee, even though I was gassing you up before. He's on bye. But I wonder if he plays any tough defenses over the next 4 of the most important weeks of the fantasy season. Well, after he goes off on bye, he plays in Kansas City in Week 12. Then he plays Houston in Week 13. Then he plays at Jacksonville, which is kind of a whatever place, but Jacksonville was at one point the number 1 defense for a little bit. Then the first week of the playoffs, he's playing in Seattle. If he is starting to crumble, and if you look back at Daniel Jones' schedule now, and with what we know about Daniel Jones now, and you kind of look back at the schedule, the Chargers were a tough defense, and he made that work really well. But a lot of the teams that he's been beaten up on, kind of cupcake defenses. He hits a little bit of above average defense, Steelers and Falcons, suddenly falls apart. And only what lies ahead over the next 5 most important weeks is a game he's automatically going to miss, and then 3 of some of the most fierce defenses in the league, in two of which are happening in some of the hardest places to play, at Kansas City and at Seattle. Alec, you're in fucking danger, my man. Next, this is now getting into the prime time show of the award show. Nick gets the trades just get worse and worse award. I get it. You're a rookie. Your first year in the DVFFL, and you get kind of a bit of a pass. And the fact that Nick is involved in trades is great. And I don't want this to be a situation in which I shame Nick into no trading, and then next year we don't get any trades, because there's no way you're going to survive that either. This is kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But when football isn't happening, I think Nick is a very savvy trader. He had 2 trades that took place that happened before a football, the weeks really even got started. The first being the Bowers as your keeper in the offseason, which I think was pretty savvy. Again, I kind of deem this as it's free money. You got $200, you had a clean slate. Go get the guy that is available. It doesn't really make a difference. You're going to draft anyway. It's all a wash. You didn't have to work hard to get that $200. It was just given to you. Then right before week 1, you nabbed Davante Adams and $5 for DJ Moore and ETN. I mean, this is also a Hall of Fame kind of level of what are we fucking doing trade? But again, it's week 1, so no one's really able to say anything. But I think we all kind of knew, hey, as I always say, if you're getting the best player and you're getting cash, you automatically won the trade. And in week 1, Nick had already racked up 2 W's from the trade market. Got Brock Bowers and got Davante Adams, and he got paid. That's a pretty fucking good thing. And this is all before football had even started. This Adams trade happened 35 minutes before week 1 Sunday football. And then football started. The evidence started to become unsealed quite a bit of how bad Nick's trades have gotten and how worse they got. So we have this beautiful Adams trade. Then we have trading Adams for Vidal, Shaheed, and $27 in week 7. He was one of 9 3-4 teams, so his season was not lost. But you're trading for Vidal and Shaheed, and you're just giving up Adams, who you just kind of won, and he was the guy. He's kind of okay, you have something. We talk about good players all the time. James Cook, Davante Adams is fucking something. Benson gets hurt, but that's fine. Bowers is going to come back. So you're Bowers, Adams, and Cook. You're still 3-4. You're in the thick of it. Just survive at this point. We have teams that are being patient like shit, which, Nick, now you're being patient for some reason. But you weren't patient in week 7. No. Got to trade away that Adams for that Vidal and Shaheed and 27 juicy dollars. Not entirely sure where we're going with this. Is this I need a running back and to tank that badly trade? I know it was bad times. You're starting some random guys, but Michael Carter's were available. Vidal was available for fab. He was 11 fab dollars. Just get aggressive. And I just feel like Nick was never aggressive about trying to solve his running back 2 position, and instead he's going to trade away real assets to get it. And so he gets it. So now he's got Vidal, and he's got Shaheed, and he's got $27. Great. Week 7, you're set. Survive some L's. Stupid, but I guess that's the team. Then your only other good wide receiver, Marvin Harrison, you trade away with Vidal the next week. And you traded, in week 8, you trade Marvin Harrison, Vidal, and 10 draft dollars for Keenan Allen. Fucking what are we doing? That's insane. You go from Davante Adams and Marvin Harrison to Shaheed and Keenan Allen, and you give up money to Cody to get Keenan Allen $10. Keenan Allen had 2 receptions this past week. $10. This is absolute fucking malpractice from a roster construction. If we had to break down the family tree that started with this Adams haul, truly just breaking down all the moving pieces, the pieces that are on to other places, what Nick gave away and what Nick has received, it breaks down like this. Nick gave away DJ Moore, Travis Etienne, Davante Adams, Harrison, and Vidal, because Vidal was temporarily on the team. So he gave away 2 running backs, Etienne and Vidal, the thing that he was searching for the whole goddamn season apparently, but not enough to spend any fab on. And then 3 wide receivers, his 3 starting drafted wide receivers, which were DJ Moore, Adams, and Harrison, which in the scope of things, not the greatest wide receiving core in the world, but a wide receiving core. So again, Moore, Etienne, Adams, Harrison, Vidal is what he gave away. And what he received for this haul was Shaheed, Keenan Allen, and 22 draft dollars in total. This is fucking stupid. Just dumb. Dumb. Truly, the trades just got worse and worse as football continued on. But to get to this point, Adams alone is the haul. You got a haul-ish if this is the haul. Vidal and Shaheed and $27. But then you gave away players. It's mind-boggling. It's truly mind-boggling. So enjoy Shaheed and Keenan Allen and your minor amount of draft dollars. Dill gave up $30 draft dollars to get just Drake London. That's already more money spent there, and he also gave up probably a similar haul. And yet here you sit with Shaheed and Keenan Allen. Truly some of the worst trading I've ever seen. Pretty bad. Speaking of regrets, Tanner gets the I regret that trade of the year. I still think about that Genty trade as astronomically stupid. It's pretty much confirmation that we're in an alternate timeline because we have Tanner, a loyal to the soil Raiders fan, trading away his favorite team's best player and his most valuable position, playing good for a Vikings backup and a Bear wide receiver who famously has never had a 4,000-yard passer. So you're going to really double down on getting a Bears wide receiver, hoping that this year is any different, which maybe technically it might be. But, since week 7, just had to follow up on this dumb trade, which I ranted and raved about earlier. Since week 7, week 7 when Mason was traded, he had an 11-point debut for Diz. But since that point, he's scored 7 points. Not per game, 7 total points over the last 3 weeks. In fact, since Genty has scored the same amount of points as Adunze and Mason combined in that same 3-week span. That's just I regret that trade, but that's not the trade that Diz regrets the most. I think it all starts with Zay Flowers and $17 for Pookie. A week 2 trade for Diz's fourth and Diz is trading for a 4th wide receiver 3. He's giving away a surprise running back 1 on the year. Imagine if he didn't do this trade, it would be Pookie, Judd, Chase Brown, all on the same team. like that's a pretty decent running back core, regardless of how you feel. Like, no, all those situations are kind of messy situations, the Bengals, the Browns, the Cowboys, but still, imagine them all on the same team. And I really feel like Diz went 0-4 karmatically because he started selling the farm in week 2, because the next day he also sold off Pickens as well, which is equally as crazy. But we've never seen a team just kick off the year selling off a running back who just put up 18 points and 2 touchdowns for $17 and Zay Flowers. Like, that's a good on Mike for the buy low there. But then, like I said, that same week he sells his only top 10 wide receiver, the only thing that is separating all of his mediocrity at his wide receiving room, for Kareem Hunt and $20, like $37 right off the bat in the first 48 hours of week 2 with no injuries on the team, and you've given up Pookie and you've given up Pickens, and you've gotten back Zay Flowers and Kareem Hunt, and again, $37. I just don't get it. And I think it all starts again from the Pookie thing, because I think Diz got weirdly comfortable, on this strategy that no one should attempt. And the strategy itself feels like that kid in class that shows up to like show and tell, like elementary school thing. And his special skill is that he can lick glue off of his elbows. Like, it's truly a remarkable skill that you can actually even lick your elbows, but it's heinously stupid that he's licking glue off of his elbows. And this is what that strategy feels like. It was like, well, thank you, Diz, for showing us that selling off your team in the first 48 hours of week 2. We'll definitely never see a team attempt that trade and or that strategy ever again. So thank you for making that mistake so viably obvious, because that was dumb. That was super dumb. So I don't really advise anyone to sell off the team, basically 2 of your potentially best players, and they turned out to be the best players before you can evaluate them, and only getting $37 is a significant amount of money, but like, you can get that fucking money in week 10. I'm not entirely sure what Diz was thinking on that one. Definitely the biggest regret you could possibly have. Cal gets the biggest what-if trade of the year. So this is kind of the big one right here. Going into trade week, we knew that Cal's going to probably be the most active member of the league because he's so desperate to offload his 4 wide receiver ones, which is a insane problem to have. And at the end of the day, you look back at what Cal started the year with and where he got to, he has effectively turned a paperclip into a Lamborghini. So that's a good thing. I mean, that we knew this was the operation. But it's at this point I need to thank all of you for holding the line on Cal. This game, hobby, lifestyle, whatever we want to call fantasy football, isn't sometimes just an app. Sometimes it can go beyond that. It goes into this grand strategy thing. And how I kind of view it is like we are playing 17 weeks. We're playing a game of poker that lasts 17 weeks. Each week on Sunday, we see each other's hands, and then the rest of the time we're reading each other's opponents. And I know that Cal was active. And I know this kind of culminates into what I'm about to talk about now. Mitch and I started talking about a trade a week before, mostly centered around swapping tight ends, maybe some other assets, Charbonnet, but like a McBride, Laporta sort of thing, and then, see with Charbonnet, maybe Addison gets involved, but it was kind of all in pieces and parts. And it could be even separated down to like maybe just selling Charbonnet, which I was a very hot market for Charbonnet this year, from people just wanting to buy him to what I wanted to know, and kind of held off on that. But nothing was like hot. Like Mitch and I very casually were talking. I mean, this is like an idea, I think even late on a Saturday or even late on a Sunday. Then, as we obviously get into trade deadline week, we start talking mid-afternoon on Thursday. I mean, truly hot thought. I mean, I sent a thought over to him on Wednesday evening of the rough outline of what was the trade for Gibbs. But like we really didn't pick it back up until mid-Thursday, where that's when the trades started to get much more real. And it's at this point, asking around, poking around at stuff like that, asking other owners what's going on. I got wind that Cal was hunting for Gibbs before, and then it kind of culminated into basically laying out our cases, almost in the fantasy court of Mitch. Trying to make our cases for our trades, and ultimately, I'm very grateful that I got it this time. I got the trade that made it work. Oftentimes, I feel like I'm on the butt end of these things where someone is just using one offer to the other, boast the other offer, and I can't match it, and I'm the one who always is on the end. Garrett has famously done this multiple times to me. Kills me every time. But this time it didn't happen. But I realized at a certain point in this trade with Mitch that I had to do this for the good of the league. I had to give it an old salute here, because if Cal was close to Gibbs, there would be a world where we have Gibbs, CMC, and some combination of Puka, Rice, Adams, and Jefferson all on the same team. And that's, not even including the darts and the peripheral players that are playing really well. I had to do this for the league. I had to make sure that Gibbs did not join that, because that is an absolutely terrifying team, absolutely terrifying combination. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that trade went through for me. Obviously, so grateful to have Gibbs. But just for the fact that I think that if a trade like that happened with Gibbs and CMC and all those other guys on the team, it truly would have tilted the league in Cal's favor. And as much as we are all gaming here, going back to my above point of like this hobby isn't sometimes something that we just do on the app. Like, you all have seen what it's like with Cal having a championship. Do you want to have him have two? Dill, do you want to have them also say back-to-back championship? Not to say this trade would have done it, but man, it would have been hard not to. It'd be hard to argue that this wouldn't be the case. I mean, that's just an insane amount of value all in one team. But this is the point where like this goes beyond that, and then goes into the poker of it all. Like, I don't want to see Cal win as much as anyone else. I don't want to have to hear the annoying "I'm the best team" all the time, and have his own like personal power ranking that is just his name, on top multiple times. So this was a trade that got really intense, and I'm glad that it ended up not going Cal's way. But we were close. We were really close there, folks. Like that was scary. I would love at this point to also. I'd love to find a way, and hopefully we get a Wilson time this week, because that's three people that we can talk about this with. But I love hearing all the misconnections on trades, and I say all this not to out anyone on the trades that we've worked with, but I just love hearing like what could have been on some of these trades and what went wrong. Not mostly to make fun of anything, but mostly just be like, I'm just so morbidly curious, because it's like the first time. Like, we've been in the trenches, and it's like World War I, we're in the trenches, and then it's Christmas, and we can all like come out to the trenches and celebrate Christmas together. And I want to hear what's going on your side of on the fence before we go back to it. And this is like that 1 week we can kind of ask those questions. So we'd love to know any other misconnections trades that were out there other than this one. This one was a scary one. I'm not sure how close people were realizing that we were to absolute doom there. And then lastly, this is an award that goes to running back threes and wide receiver threes out there. They're not worth draft cash anymore. This goes back to my earlier point. I think this is more of an observation of the market. But since we've had auction dollars, this league has a very healthy flex/starter backup market sort of thing. Oftentimes you can sell 3 to 5 players a year for prices ranging from like $1 to $5. Sometimes they go up to $7, and they kind of just stack. You can kind of stack those buys and sells and fill out or refresh your bench. Like, if you could do the strategy I did a couple years ago, where I just sold individual pieces, very, very small pieces, very slowly, I got up to 250. That's a strategy that you could take. Or you could do it, you could buy those pieces if you want to just like get your bench better. And we still see this exist. These kind of trades exist this year. But the weird thing was there was exactly 4 of these kind of trades. These are guys that are not starters. These are guys that are going for like less than $5 to $6, and they're just kind of like there. But in 2024, we had 4 of these exact trades in 1 week. We had a Kakers trade, a Ray Davis trade, a Ray Davis trade again, and we had a Trey Tucker trade. All these trades were like less than $1, or not less than $1, less than $3. Just kind of exchanging with players that are peripheral bench players, maybe backups, for nothing. We generally average around 15 of these kind of trades, these small cash for small player trades. And in 2025, there just wasn't a market for that, which, again, if we're going to kind of project what this year was, it's very competitive. But even in a competitive year, I would have felt that these kind of trades were going to be the ones that we would have the most of, because it's like, oh, I got to win on the edges. I'm just going to win a little bit here, get a little bit there. Not going to be the end of the world. And instead, we didn't get that at all. I don't know. I think this could be something in which this is actually a much larger shift than it was a tight year, it was a competitive year, or that maybe people don't value this stuff. I think what has happened, and it's surprising, but like everything in life is cyclical. We've come right back around this year in particular that the waiver wire, which is probably one of the worst waiver wires we've had in years, is insanely important. And The only thing I'm looking into is that if next year this behavior continues, then we've fully bought into the waiver wire as a viable place to find assets. And this is obviously explained by the fact that there's a desire to trade draft cash for fab. There's also the idea that we've also had the least, like, everyone has spent a lot of money in fab right now. This is probably the lowest average amount of fab that we've had at this point in the season that we've had in a long time. And it's because we're relying on the waiver wire to just go get those guys. What I think is funny, though, is that even this phenomenon that's happening, it seems like teams would rather spend their coveted draft dollars for fab money and then spend that fab money to get a player rather than just using your draft dollars to just get a player. It seems like we want to add that extra step, which makes it feel fun and different, I guess. But that's the weird observation that I don't think should be lost in all of this, is that running back threes and wide receiver threes don't have a market right now in this league. Those like kind of small player sort of trades, and it's because we were relying on the waiver wire, which has been very active this year, in one of the worst waiver wires we've ever had. And because of that, we now have a newfangled love of fab, which does make the steps to acquiring such small players even now more complicated than ever, as you might want to trade your draft dollars for fab dollars and then spend those fab dollars on a blind auction to get those players when you could just easily just send the draft dollars that you spent to get the fab dollars to just get that player. So that's the trade awards. We had, the most probably trade of the year goes to Jaden for his Goddard, Dobbins, Johnston for Sun God trade. We had the most useless trade of the week go to Brandon for his Godwin for $4 trade. We had what are we doing not trading for a QB trade with Alec, not trading for Stafford. We get the trades just get worse and worse award, which goes on. I mean, no one was even close to this. Nick gets that one. We get the I regret that trade of the year award, which goes to Tanner and his trading away of Pookie. And then we get the biggest what if trade of the year, which was Cal on the Gibbs trade. And then another kind of observation, but an honorary, in memoriam to RB3s and wide receiver 3s, as they are just not worthy of cash anymore. They are just meant for fab. But that is the episode this week. That is week 11. We only have 4 more weeks until the end of the season, regular season, I should say. This is the most intense time of the year, probably the most fun time of the year. We're past trades. It's nice to kind of focus up. Appreciate everybody kind of being such a good sport with all the trades this year, at least on my end of it. I've been very busy, and I feel like I had long periods of time of not responding to people, which is not usually my thing. So you knew something was up when I'm not responding to you instantly with a paragraph of a reason why. So appreciate all that. It was a very fun trade deadline, ultimately. Yeah, now we're getting to the home stretch. There's only a couple weeks left. I would like to say also that this is the final normal week that we have of football until we get into Thanksgiving week. I think this week we have a normal slate. I don't think there's a ton of people on bye. I don't think there might be anyone on bye, to be honest. Then after that, in week 12, we have a shit ton of teams on bye. Then we have Thanksgiving, and it kind of gets all wacky from there. So enjoy this week for everybody who's looking to do that. And otherwise, I'll be talking to you all later.